Hi, everyone, and welcome again to Decrypting Relationships. My name is Tolola Falashe, and with me is
Olu Benson.
Olu Benson. Excellent. Nice to be back for episode 2. So like we always say, disclaimer right up front, we are not professional marriage counselors or relationship experts. We are simply here to share nuggets about relationships. Olu and I have about 47 years, almost 50 years of marriage experience, and we use this dialogue, this discussion to just, draw out the treasures of knowledge that we have gleaned over the, almost 5 decades collectively. Olu, anything from you before we start on today's topic?
Just a cheeky adjustment to that statement for those who might just be listening for the first time. Tolu and I are not married. We just have almost 50 years in our different marriages, because you said we have almost 50 years in our marriage.
Of marriage experience. Well, thank you for making, the last episode I talked about, I'm working on making sure my communication is very clear. In my head, I was going to say 50 years of marriage experience collectively, but maybe it didn't come out. So yes, Olu and I are not married, and we've been married for almost 50 years.
We're not that old.
So
anyway, that was my cheeky adjustment.
Together, Olu is married to someone else. I'm married to someone else as well, and we are just doing this. I think it's a passion of ours, really, isn't it? Just to see relationships and marriage work, because it should work. We have all of the resources to make it happen, to make it work.
Yeah.
And that's why we're having this.
If we have the right education and we're equipped with the right information on how it should work. Because I think the key challenge, based on my experience from what I've heard from people, is they go in and there's a bed of roses being painted like it's all wonderful. You go in there, you're not meant to argue, you're not meant to have a difference of opinion. Everything is just supposed to happen and just be wonderful. As much as there's a wonderful element to it, it's also hard work. It's just like a career progression. When you get onto it, your bosses at the interview make you feel like that company is the best company to come and work for. And then you get on the job, you start seeing them for who they really are. And you start seeing some lapses in their policies, in their outlook towards life, in their treatment of you, and then you have to adjust.
Yep, the honeymoon period disappears, and then you see, oh my goodness, what is this?
Yeah, exactly.
I call it and they lived happily ever after syndrome. Those stories never tell us.
No one ever tells you at counseling that, brave yourselves. It's hard work.
Exactly.
But we trust that.
The work just starts. And like we said earlier, marriage actually works. It can work. It will work. Okay, fantastic. Episode 2. So last episode, we touched a little bit about the foundation, what was needed to, make sure that we are setting ourselves up for success in our marriages. Yes. And Olu shared with us a very powerful, simple yet genius, nugget, which is it always starts with you. It starts with the self. We need to do a self-assessment and evaluate our values and our belief system so that we can communicate them clearly and understand, manage expectations. I think that's very key. Yeah. And today in this episode, we are going to talk about preparing for marriage. Is that correct, Olu?
No, you have to meet someone before you prepare for marriage.
Well, I thought you said we would be prepared even before you meet the person, so that you know that actually, this person, I've made a connection with them, and because of the preparation.
We didn't touch on meeting anyone last time. We just touched on you doing a self preparation for, okay, my
Oh,
head
you're
space.
stretching me. You really want to squeeze all of the.
Mister,
Okay.
remember we are working on your communication simplicity. So now we
Yeah,
need to make it
absolutely,
very
absolutely,
plain.
absolutely.
So,
Okay, so
so
let's talk about the state of mind that we need to have before marriage. I think that's the way I would see it. How would you phrase it?
I think we kind of touched on that because and also it's right to get the right kind of mentoring. If you're privileged to have married people who are in healthy marriage relationships around you, so you can see marriage firsthand, see that it works, see that
So
it's
let me
healthy.
interrupt you. Let me interrupt. Before then, share your story on how you know, right, I am ready to step into this institution called marriage. Let's go.
You know,
How did that happen? How did that happen for you?
like I told you, everything about me was definitely outside of the box, very far away from the norm. Because even after I left uni, having realized that was the next. Once you started working, you needed to start opening one of your eyes to make sure you're looking and start planning for that. I then got there. Back then in Nigeria, I think they still do it. It's called the service year, the NYSC, National Youth for Service and something, NYSC year. So yeah, so that was a year. Eventually, we went on that program. It was a 1-year program, and that was when I met my current husband. And yeah, so do you want us to get into the meat, or how do we want to, how do you want me to
I
do
can
with
share
this?
mine. I can share mine quickly, and then maybe we can then unpack it a little bit, and then
Okay.
look at some of the nuggets. So for me, how did I know? I guess similar to you, I'd graduated from university, and my thought then wasn't so much to get married immediately, even though last episode I talked about my desire for wanting to get married was because I felt I missed out on the family unit because my mom and dad were divorced from when I was quite young, and I always used to be fascinated by marriage, family units that were together,
Yeah.
So when I graduated, I went through like a very difficult patch because at university I picked up some quite terrible habits. Okay.
We won't
And
go into that today.
not today, not today. So actually, we've been, and one of the things we do on our podcast is that we are brutally honest, and we share parts of our life stories that we feel not to glorify some of the mistakes we do, but just to say, what, these things happen.
Yeah.
And there is always a way out if we seek a way out. So I at university I picked up some really bad habits with drugs and alcohol, and even though I was a Christian, I experimented a little bit on it, and I got a little bit, I went too far in that journey. Anyway, so after I graduated, very fortunately, again, I was very blessed that I had the right sense to really then prioritize my my faith. So I really turned to my faith, and I really asked God for help to restoring the relationship, the right relationship that I started a few years before I went to university. And it was in that process of getting back into the level, the right standard of relationship with God, that the idea of marriage then began to surface again in my mind, where God was saying, right, you need to clean up your act, get rid of some of these bad habits, because start getting ready to settle down into marriage. And I think that's when it started to work for me. I think my faith triggered that. Otherwise, I think I would have possibly just felt, I'm just happy, happy-go-lucky, having fun, that quote unquote fun, and then, then I would miss out on my ambition to start a family, So it was my faith that really triggered that that season in my life?
Yeah, I think mine is a bit different to yours, because my faith actually kept my feet properly on the ground, because I became a Christian at the age of 12, 13. So I just made up my mind that, of course, at that age, teenage, years, everybody was starting to have boyfriends and talking about all sorts. And I just told myself, girl, you're too young to get into this. You didn't want anyone messing you around, or you didn't want to be messed up. So just stay away. That was a personal choice. Yeah. So when I said in the first episode that, all through uni, I actually made a conscious prayer that, God, if the right guy is on this campus, let him not show his face, because it was going to be an outright no. I wasn't even going to consider it, because it was a no-no. Just for people to have a better context into that comment. I was 14 when I got to university. So what was I had no business with a man or with a boy.
Yeah.
So, and when I graduated, I was barely 20. That was despite the fact that I studied a 5-year course and that. So I just thought I wasn't not close enough to even start considering having anything of the sort. So hence then going back to God consciously now, when I got to age 20 and when I was leaving uni, say, okay, now by the time I worked for a few years ago, I was asking, so what's next, miss? Yeah. Hence my prayer to say, let the right person now come. So yeah, so my thing was, just to keep myself, keep my body pure, make sure I kept my body. I abstained from anything that could lure me or tempt me into having relationships that were not necessary or that would break my heart. And when the time was right, I went back to say, okay, now I'm ready, God. Bring it on.
No, I think that's you sort of like unpacked a very specific area that I was alluding to when I said it was my faith that triggered it. When I said I went back, to God, and I said I needed to, fix up my relationship with Him, because we know sexual intimacy is preserved for marriage,
Yeah.
And I think in my my approach and my attempt to just get my relationship right, I knew that was an area, because obviously we know that university culture. I didn't go to university in Nigeria. I went to university here in the UK.
Okay.
I'm not really sure what it's like in Nigeria, but here in the UK, obviously it's like you've got a lot of young, people, young adults who they have freedom thrusted at them almost all of a sudden.
It's the same everywhere.
Right. Okay. So I didn't want to assume, and I think with that, there's a lot of sexual expression that is outside of our Christian faith, and I guess that's what I meant when I said, obviously trying to get my faith back on track, meant that I would have to not only see all the bad habits I mentioned earlier on, drugs and alcohol. I think I just left out the promiscuous acts, I guess, as well. So yeah. So I think it's important for us to mention this, because there'll be people out there who will probably, there's a dissatisfaction, isn't there, when there is, I guess, sex outside of marriage, no matter how fascinating it is, deep down inside. I think there is a moral compass inside of all of us that says, what, something is not quite right here.
Maybe you should emphasize that, because I wouldn't know. I'm not trying to be arrogant, but I wouldn't know what that feeling is like. And I think this is one of the things I feel we need to emphasize. That my keeping my head together was not because there was no pressure, and to avoid being put under undue pressure, the best thing was for me to just totally abstain from any relationship with any boy. Because even no matter how platonic it was, we're human beings, we're sexual beings. So it would be silly of me to deny the fact that, if I look at this guy long enough, I won't feel something. So in order not to feel nothing, I didn't go into it at all. So I didn't have any special friends. funnily, all my friends were boys, but I didn't have any boyfriend. If you understood what if you understand what I'm saying, I was a tomboy on campus. I know now they're saying being called a tomboy is not even politically correct anymore. It's whatever. But anyway, that's for another day. But I bragged about being a tomboy. I ran around with the boys on campus. I was I was called a lady racer because I was always running everywhere. So I always had people picking on me for always running. So yeah, so that's just a bit of a background to myself. So I thought, you know what, mix with the boys, right? Because if you're going to get into something, because like I said, it was always something that was incorporated at the back of your mind, a young girl, that you're going to get married. So you saw your parents, it was a good home. So if you're going to be in one eventually, then start understanding that was the way I looked at it. That you need to understand the mindset of a typical man. For you to handle it in a healthy manner. So yeah, I think this
is where our different perspectives bring a lot of value to the talks, is because you have that perspective, don't you, of coming from the female side, the lady who obviously was a tomboy, and again, you say a lot of, or maybe like you said, maybe tomboy is tom person, whatever it is, you know what I mean. But anyway. So there is that perspective, because there'll be people who have that experience, and there'll be people who maybe have the opposite experience, which is maybe similar to mine, where, for one reason or the other, I tell young people, if you're going to drink at all, drink responsibly, because if you don't, you lose control. And when you lose control, you are then open to all kinds of whatever, you understand. And I think this is why, and again, it will impact on the relationships that we have later on in life. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, I'm listening, I'm learning.
Yeah. So let me so again, just sharing my own experience, and like I said, drugs, alcohol means that you lose your inhibition. Imagine you're in a party or a club setting, you're drunk and you whatever, and you're dancing, there's loud music, and I don't need to go further.
Yeah, I'm sure.
People get maybe closer than they should, and then your rational mind shuts down, and there's only one thing going on: your hormones and all the chemicals in your body begin to fire up. And then what happens is, because what triggered this conversation as well was that if you do have sex outside of marriage, at the end of it, something inside of you tells you, your conscience. I know you said you've not had that experience, and thank God for that. That's amazing to share that experience. But for those of us who didn't have that experience, I can say categorically that, and even from a male's point of view, you come away thinking, what, something deep down inside saying, that's not right. There's something wrong. You may not be able to put your finger on it, you may not be able to articulate it or even label it or define it, but deep down inside you're like, nah, this is.
But could I also ask, could that consciousness really spring from the fact that you already had the knowledge of God and you know right and wrong? Because when you look at bringing this into our current world, it seems to be the acceptable thing for that to be, marriages are being kind of dissed, and it's almost like the societal expectation that, people don't really get married really anymore. You don't have to if you don't want to.
I think what it is that society, media paints one picture. The films paint. I mean, how many films do you see where there isn't some sexual expression? So I think media promotes it, media sells it because it says sex sells. But I think the reality is, any human being that has sex outside of marriage, something deep within, and even if you're not a believer, if you're an atheist, something deep within will tell you, this isn't quite right. You may drown that voice. You may suppress it, but it's always there. And
Okay.
it's not so, yeah, and this is my experience. That's been my experience. My experience, my own personal experience, I'm from speaking to a lot of young people, speaking to a lot of peers as well. You know, they did say, yeah, there was something inside that they just felt, especially, you know, the female friends that I've had, they just felt, you know what, yeah, there's something just wasn't, you know, because, yeah, one female friend that I had, she put it this way. She said, Tolu, you know, before I got married, I had, this is the way she put it, 2 body counts. That's what she calls it, body counts. You know, I wasn't, now she has her own, you know, beliefs. It's not necessarily sort of like the Christian beliefs. But she said, with those 2, I came away really, really feeling that I lost something, and there was a dissatisfaction there. And I think, so like I said, I've spoken to a lot of people about this, and the feeling has been quite mutual.
Okay. So that's something, it's good to put that out there, because, you know, like you say, people, I know a lot, especially girls, they feel pressured into this.
Yes.
And the shame that they feel afterwards, even from, you know, some of the stories you heard, it's almost like something that mustn't be spoken about, because the society makes it sound like it's okay for you to get on with it. It's what defines your sexuality. It's what, you know, we're all sexual beings. So, you know, you can do whatever you want. But
because think about it. Sorry to interrupt you, but think about it. A guy meets a girl, right? They start seeing each other. They have sex. And the guy is like, oh, you know, down the line, sorry, this is not working. I'm moving on. You know, the girl's like, well, you know, you've it's like you've had me, you know, we've made this connection. We've connected, and you're walking away. And I think that this is where marriage secures, doesn't it? Marriage is almost like, you know, a commitment. Like, I'm not walking away just after, you know, we've had sex after 5 times, that sort of thing. So
I think that was my greatest fear, why I chose to, because it wasn't like anybody told me, oh, don't do this, don't do that. Because I just thought to myself, really, how many people before you eventually settle?
Exactly.
And also, you know, even after I met the right person, of course, though, you know, there were hormones flying everywhere, because you started feeling some feelings that you didn't know you could feel before you got married, and you had to deal. We'll talk about those too, the temptations. And I kept thinking to myself, even after the parents were aware that we were serious, and the temptations were, God forbid, if this guy dropped, because it sounded really dark. I was like, okay, my kind of guardian statement was, what if this guy dropped dead before your wedding night? Your parents knew him, wasn't guaranteed that you were married. So just keep yourself. And it wasn't easy, so I have to put it out there. You know, staying away from, especially now that you know you're going into it, and you have this person that you're madly in love with, and your hormones are flying everywhere. You see them, they're butterflies everywhere. The temptations, your hormones will be screaming. I will not deny that, because that I experienced. But how we keep ourselves so that we respect each other when we then get into marriage is now something that we all now have to talk about, in terms of how to manage that. Because if I told you I was just shut down, it was all good for the 4 years of courtship, nothing happened, and I didn't feel nothing, I'll be lying to myself. But then the education comes from, how do you handle yourself when you find yourself in such a situation, and you've gone before God to say, God, I'm going to keep myself, because sex is for marriage.
Yes,
I don't care what society tells me. My belief, and like I said, I'm not a certified counselor, so I'm not speaking by any qualification to be affiliated with anybody. I'm speaking from my personal conviction. And I know sex is for marriage, and I'm raising my daughters to live like that. So it will be a shame for me to say something else here when this is my belief. So so we need to talk about the reality of courtship, and when you start feeling all the feelings, so to speak, and how do you handle those? So back to where we were going before we digress into this, which was a very good digression, because it's something that needs to be talked about for people to know that these feelings and these temptations are real.
Can I say something very quickly? Let me say something very quickly, please. Very, very quickly, because you mentioned something that then triggered this thought. I hear that, in recent times, there is a mindset that says if a girl doesn't give sex to a guy, then she doesn't love him or something. And then that until she gives him sex, then she doesn't love him. And then she's under love pressure. I think you and I can easily say, please, if you are caught in that web of lies, please
walk on by, step
walk
away
on by.
from it.
Walk
Step
on
away
by.
from it.
In fact,
because
if a guy cannot wait for marriage to demand for sex, then please, I know it sounds old-fashioned, but trust. This is where foundations, going back to the foundations of marriage, this is where foundations are built. If a guy cannot wait, if he does not respect you enough, again, it all comes down to education and the background. But this is why we're making this statement now. If the word is not out there, we are putting our word out there. If a guy cannot wait until marriage to demand for sex, he does not respect you, and he does not deserve to be in your company. Women, please, young women, I'll say that again. If a guy cannot wait, if he's not ready to put the ring on the finger before demanding for sex, and again, there's a process for that as well. It's not like a 15-minute, I'm going to get married to you type thing. There's a process for that. If you cannot marry before he demands for sex, it does not deserve to be in your company.
And I'll tell you from experience that there is a great reward, because the kind of respect that your husband gives you, having realized that you held it together.
Yes.
It's just immeasurable, because there is a different layer that goes with that. The fact that you held it together, even when he pressured you into trying to think, oh, it's all good, we're almost there. We're almost married. Almost is not married.
Yeah.
So even when you're engaged, you're still not married. Anything can happen. Engagements fall apart.
Exactly. And also, for me, I've already alluded to the fact that obviously I didn't wait till marriage before and so I put my hands up to that. And the reason why I do that is because one thing I would say is that I wasn't educated. As a matter of fact, I was miseducated. I thought the measure of a man was how quickly you could have sex with a girl, or how you could get her to have sex with you, because that was the dominant culture at the time, And so for people out there, please, we're not condemning. This is not to make people feel condemned, because like I said, I fell into that trap. I thought you're not a man until you have actually had sex with a girl. And as soon as I found out that was a lie, and it was deceptive, and it was damaging, I repented. I really, really did. And thank God, I'm really, really grateful to God that I wasn't one of these people. Yes, I missed the mark before marriage, but I didn't have, like my friend put, body counts. I didn't have like a whole stack of body counts, because I think there was still something in the back of my mind that felt, nah, you shouldn't do this. You shouldn't do this. Even though society was pressuring me to, so I didn't have a lot of body counts as well. So, but it's not a brag or boast. It's just sharing my mistakes, and just putting out there that we mustn't cave into the pressure of society to have sex outside of marriage.
And because we said earlier, also as part of our reason, or one of our reasons for doing this, is to try and educate people and potentially catch them young. For those who are single, who are still trying to get into this institution of marriage, or it's a serious relationship, before you start repeating the mistakes that have been made ahead of you by people who have already fallen into the trap of these lies, that if you don't have sex with a guy, then it is not love. This is a good time for you to start reassessing whatever pressure is being put on you. So our demographic covers everybody who is looking into that. So this is not condemning those who have made that mistake, because there's grace before God to forgive. But for those who haven't and are still being put under the pressure, or are contemplating, do I give in because this guy is telling me he's going to walk on? If he's yours, God will keep him. And that is what I want to say. So please just hear us and be encouraged by it, that it's okay to say, no, I'm going to wait. it's okay to say, I am not doing this. And please don't put yourself in compromising positions where you're forced to. Also, you need to make sure you're in a position where you can flee from, if you're in such a compromising position that the guy feels, he's just you and I, it has to happen. If you don't feel it's the right thing for you to do, then please flee from that situation. And I'm sure the guy will respect you for it. It might bruise his ego, because it might lash out because you bruised his ego, because you've just literally made him feel less of a man. If that is his orientation, that, until that's done, he's not a man. But deep down in his heart, or what do you say to that, Tolu?
No, absolutely. Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head, because it's all about miseducation and, fixing all those lies out there, putting standards and values. I was just thinking about it. I know 50 or 60 years ago sounds like a long time ago. Well, it isn't a long time ago. It isn't, considering the fact that we've been on the earth for 6,000 plus years. As far back as 50 or 60 years ago, family values were very, very high on the agenda in society. It's just recently that, if my great granddad or my granddad watched some of the films that we watch now, they would. Do you remember the swimming?
Even my parents, not even grandparents, our parents.
Even our parents
will almost have a heart attack.
They're like, "What are you watching? What is this?" What? So no, absolutely. So it's like you said. It's just about correcting, just making those little adjustments and making those corrections, because what happens is we don't want to take some of this terrible ideology and habits into marriage, because then the marriage will again it's going to be built on very rocky foundation, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think just something that just kind of sprang up in my mind now is, if a guy cannot abstain or hold it together whilst you're courting, what guarantee have you that he's going to hold it together when you're married?
Absolutely.
Because life does happen. Sometimes you guys have to be apart for whatever reason or reasons. I have friends who have been, who have been taken with some illness, and they're not in a position to have sex. If all the guy knows, or if you as a girl, because we have to look at it, like, could be both, it could be either way. Some women have very high drives, and they're the ones pushing for this to happen. So I wanted to correct that misconception. So there's always a guy who has a high sex drive. It could be the girl pushing for it. I have heard of such instances. But what if life happens and that your relationship is really built on the physical? Because that is the other thing you need to look at, that if that is what you find the most fun in that relationship, then your relationship and your future marriage is built on just the physical aspect. There are times in marriage, I'm speaking from experience, when that is not going to be feasible.
Yes.
Life happens. Not because you don't want to, but things do happen. And if that is not being incorporated to have that discipline, then it becomes an issue. And those are the kind of things you need to start looking at. That it's not about the here and now. It's about, how am I building? What are the expectations that I'm introducing into this relationship to make both of us understand discipline, understand respect, and everything else that comes with marriage.
Fantastic. Wow. Olu and I, we didn't really plan this direction, but even I've learned from this, and I think, just on reflection, it ties in very, very nicely to the first episode. We talked about foundations. Whatever we do before marriage will follow us into marriage. As Olu said, if we can't exercise self-control before marriage, then there is no guarantee that marriage will that we'll be able to exercise self-control in the marriage as well. Yeah. So, I think that is a powerful nugget. That's fantastic. Okay, so we're going to wrap up, aren't we?
Yes, we are.
We're going to wrap up. And next episode, we will then bring on maybe the next layer of anything that maybe we've missed out on this layer. So on this episode. So like we said, like we always say, please comment, to this podcast, to this episode. Let us know your thoughts, your questions, and if there anything else maybe we've missed out. If you could just drop a comment there, we will respond to it as soon as possible and get back to people.
And also the areas that you want us to maybe not immediately that potentially address in future, please start bringing up those ideas, because the idea is for this to be a long-term thing whereby we're able to help people. If people have practical situations that they want addressed, then we will seek to do that. And also, if you give us enough warning, we might, because we're not experts. Even in our marriages, we're still learning, and we don't have all the experience. So if there are areas that we'll probably need to maybe invite other people in who have experiences in those areas, if you give us enough time to give us the heads up as to topics that are burning that you want to discuss, then it gives us time to invite the right people to this platform to have those conversations with us. So yeah, like we say, marriage is a journey. We're all learning, just like life is a school. You never stop learning. So even for those of us who have been married for years, there's still things that happen in my marriage, or I do, but I'm sure my husband will think, wow, so you still do that, or he does something. I'm thinking, oh dear, you're still doing that.
Yeah.
So you're just learning every time. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. Excellent. So guys, thank you very much for listening. Remember, subscribe, like, comment, and if you found this useful and you think somebody could learn or get some benefit from it, please forward the link on. Olu, thank you very much. I think it's been amazing. We will meet the same time for the next episode.
Yes, we will.
Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.